On Wednesday, I had something called duty, which is essentially sitting in a concrete box with the telephone for 24 hours. On Thursday, I caught up on all the messages I've been sent. Now, I've left out all my personal details in my stories and even the pictures provided. However, I still receive a threat via text from an unknown number. It couldn't be any of my friends because 1, they're all still in the field. I am the only one back. 2, all of the pictures have never been shown to anyone. The threat was simple. Quit writing or I'll tell command who you are and what you've been saying. My first reaction was to utilize the legal services on base. They've assured me that what I'm doing is perfectly fine as long as I maintain that my stories are not officially endorsed by the USMC. However, I am still beyond creeped that someone found me. I don't think I'll stop unless something crazy happens, but we'll find out together. Anyway, here's my final addition to my time in the mountains. Time in the mountains. The next morning, after being evacuated, everyone was obviously exhausted and a few guys were sick with pneumonia. Being wet, cold, and nearly scared to death really took a toll. I don't think the incident with the thing outside our tents was talked about in large groups, but it was definitely talked about off on the side. A few guys maintained the fact that it was just a great big prank and laughed it off, but whenever they laughed, it was like they were asking for some form of validation. Even in the rear, we were kept busy cleaning weapons and gear and getting ready for whatever's next. Our unit has an unexplainable obsession with training, and it really cut into our morale, but it made time go fast. Life seemed pretty normal despite the weather. I stayed indoors at all times unless we were exercising. I didn't have the heart to tell anyone that it was probably watching us from the trees, even if I didn't feel it. The farthest I had ventured was maybe a week after coming down from the mountain. The base has a small store with an inventory identical to a gas station. I'd gotten tired of what they were feeding us, and my mind had started to rationalize all of my fear away. So I went. Nothing crazy happened, but I did however notice that there were people there who were definitely not Marines. These guys were big, burly, and sported full beards. I pretended to look at a section of Doritos and caught a glimpse of a very particular trident tattoo. This meant that whoever this person was a Navy SEAL. Currently or at some point. I wonder about the other guys. I approached the bearded guy and simply asked him if he was a SEAL. When he turned around to look at me, he simply said, "Yeah, sure. How'd you know?" The tattoo is a dead giveaway. I used to see my college roommate hang all that motivational shit up in his room. Oh, really? I didn't know what to say, but I wanted to impress him. He's actually a SEAL now. His demeanor got a little friendlier. Ah, shit, what's his name? Kurtz. He's an officer, apparently. Is his first name Walter? Yeah, it is. Do you know him? Do I know him? He's outside smoking a cigarette. A little information about my friend. We worked out a lot together as we both had a sick fascination with pain. Either running, hiking, or swimming. We would torture ourselves nearly every day until he left. I kept up with him as he went through all the training cycles. Then he just disappeared. I'm talking gone. On every fucking form of social media. I talked to his parents and all they got from him was an occasional letter. It always bothered the hell out of me that he just straight up disappeared from the world without saying a damn thing. I thought about it nearly every day. There he was, outside, and all I wanted to do was to get in one good punch. Navy SEAL or not, he's still a dick. When we stepped outside and I saw him, I still hated his guns. But I had a feeling that me versus a bunch of Navy SEALs probably wasn't going to work, despite having the power of God and anime on my side. He didn't even notice me until I said his name. In any other setting, I probably would have saluted since he's an officer and I was enlisted scum, but I didn't give a shit. He seemed genuinely happy to see me and wouldn't let go of my hand. We did some catching up, mostly questions from him about my boring life. Whenever I'd ask him stuff, he would deflect and make a joke or give me a word answer. The man just wouldn't elaborate about what he's been up to. After about 10 minutes of talking, the group of them decided that they were just about done stocking up on Mountain Dew and gummy worms. Before they headed back, Kurtz pulled me aside and threw his cigarette to the ground. With a look of complete concern and worry, he said, "Listen, dude, you really shouldn't go back up there. This ain't a place you want to be. You understand?" I wasn't really sure what to say. I just nodded solemnly before he shook my hand and left. That was the last time I've been able to talk to him since. One thing to note is that the group of guys didn't all have beards or tattoos. Don't get me wrong here, but Navy SEAL guys have a certain look. I can't explain it unless you've been around them long enough. But not everyone in that group was a SEAL. I saw a guy wearing an armor-related shirt, so I'm assuming they were some form of cross-branch team. Anyway, I headed back to the concrete hotels and spent some time reading. Just trying to get my mind off of what he had said. Should I break my ankle or pretend to be sick? They don't have Uber here, and the highway is quite some distance away. Ultimately, I decided my pride was more important than my life. I ended up going back into the mountains. I felt nothing but dread. Here I was, being stalked and harassed by something. At the top of that, the Marine Corps is destroying my body every day. The human body isn't designed to hike 175 kilometers in a week with 200 pounds of gear, let alone up mountains. However, sometimes you get a break. The hikes were relatively short, and all we did was practice our rock climbing skills at night. After about 3 weeks in these mountains, my body had started to get used to the altitude and the amount of physical activity we were doing. I was counting down the days in my head every few minutes, making quick calculations and crunching the numbers on each activity and how much closer I am to safety. Things weren't going to be that easy, of course. I had a pretty decent amount of anxiety and dread this time, but I rationalized that it was just my mind. I didn't notice until the third day, when we peaked one of the larger mountains, that we were headed for the Devil's Incline. It had to be a mistake because the compasses were acting so weird, right? I talked to a few of the higher-ups, and sure enough, that was our final destination. Because the CO thought it would be a challenge. Great. They're leading us straight to our deaths. Dulce et decorum est kind of deal. The closer we got there, the worse I felt about this whole thing. I couldn't sleep for more than 10 minutes because I swear I could feel it watching me. Not wanting to go crazy, I confided with my squad leader, and all he said was, "Yeah, I felt it. Don't want to talk about it." The next day we were briefed about our final training exercise. Our job was to assault to the peak of Devil's Incline. The vast majority of it would be climbed using carabiners and rope and traditional techniques. The final 500 meters is mostly gravel and can be traversed on foot. We would be provided overwatch by special forces operating in the area. Nothing new. The military is imaginative. If we see them, ignore them. We begin the assault at sunset and get to the middle of the mountain around midnight. Everything is going smooth. We're climbing the cliffs slowly and methodically. On one particularly large cliff, I set up one of the anchor points so the Marines can rappel from the other side of the cliff. I turn around and head for the next cliff. Before I start to climb, someone angrily asks me why the hell I cut the line, and that I could have got someone killed. I respond that I didn't cut the line and head back to see what the hell happened. The rope was sliced perfectly, like surgically almost. If you've ever cut climbing rope before, you know that it's almost impossible to get such a clean cut. You'll always have a tiny bit fraying, even with the sharpest of knives. The rope has no fraying at all. I'm assuming that it was the same thing that's been harassing us all month, trying to do its best to kill us. Fortunately, there weren't many cliffs after that. The 500-meter slope of gravel turned out to be way too steep to hike straight up. Also, out of nowhere, a blizzard decided to make our lives hell. To this day, I've never seen such terrible weather. We're talking 70-mile-per-hour winds, whiteout conditions, everything. It was insane. On the way up, I swore I was going to freeze to death. The slope seemed like it would never end. After about 3 hours, someone mentioned that multiple Marines were missing. Our first reaction was to stop and sit there for an hour, and then send half of us back down in an attempt to find these Marines. That was the coldest I'd ever been in my life. At least hiking provided some warmth, but sitting there being buried alive in the snow and wind, it was bad. It was bad. I don't know who made the call to keep pushing forward to the top, but it was the only way anyone was going to survive. There was a road on the other side of the mountain with vehicles most likely waiting for us. There was no use kicking around anymore for the Marines in the snow because things were just getting worse. Pretty much everyone had some form of frostbite. We just didn't have the right gear to protect ourselves. Finally, we get to the top and thankfully the tents are waiting for us. The tent I'd gotten was broken, so I ended up piling in with a bunch of other guys like a bunch of sardines. What a shit show that was setting up in the wind. They gave us maybe 20 minutes whilst they figured out what to do about the missing guys. I'm assuming they called the proper authorities before that. It was way too windy for helicopters and nearly impossible for even us to search the area. The wrong gust of wind could literally blow us down the mountain, tumbling face first. Their solution was to first use our thermal optics from the top and search for the guys. Nothing. Then we all got in a big line and held hands as we walked down the mountain. Nothing. Granted, we didn't bring our 200 pounds of crap with us, so it was a lot easier walking back up. By now, it was 4 AM and it seemed to be getting worse. They told us to go back to our tents and warm up for 20 minutes because we were literally turning into zombies. Now, this is quite possibly the weirdest part. For the next 12 hours, no one remembers what the hell happened. Everyone woke up in their tents and have zero recollection about it. It was daytime now and everywhere was covered in snow. A few of the Special Forces guys, including Kurtz, were talking to all of my higher-ups about something. I didn't find out until later that the Special Forces dude found all of our missing guys at various locations. Not 30 kilometers far, but much shorter distances like 5 to 10 kilometers. Ears bleeding too. While it's not impossible to hike in a few hours, it's kind of damn hard to get lost on a mountain where your only objective is to go up. Not to the side, or around, or down. Up, damn it. We'd radioed that in, and the base camp sent special vehicles designed for snow to get them. They kind of resembled half-tracks. The same day, they loaded us up onto these special snow trucks and told us we were going back to the barracks. When we got there, we got debriefed on how successful our mission was and some BS about accountability of guys. Blah, blah, blah. In any other situation, they would have lost their jobs if they lost Marines. Just none in Bridgeport, I guess. We packed up our bags that night and got woken up around 3 AM to get on a bus back to the desert. I was extremely relieved to be back. No one ever really talked about our time there again. The guys who disappeared always came back from the hospital saying they don't remember anything, or that they don't want to talk about it. Never go to Bridgeport, folks. What you're seeing now is a picture of me sitting on the rock at the base of the Devil's Incline. To this day, I have no idea what the hell the distortion is. I honestly couldn't have done that if I tried. Could this be why the NCIS guy asked if I'd taken any pictures? Oh yeah, by the way, I obviously blurred my face, serial numbers and names. I'm talking about the bottom half. There are also some creepy old buildings on the way there. I wonder why they were abandoned.